Most people think endless scrolling is just habit, but the real story is hidden inside the numbers. 62% of users spend more time online than they intend. Platforms measure every swipe, tap, and pause, optimizing feeds to extend sessions by 12% or more. Each interaction retrains an algorithm designed to exploit your brain's reward system, triggering dopamine spikes similar to gambling. Billions are being unconsciously steered, not by accident, but by a deliberate architecture operating at neurological depth. The consequences go far beyond wasted hours. How deep does this engineered manipulation really go? In recent global surveys, 62% of internet users report spending more time online than they planned. This pattern is not confined to any one country or age group, and it appears in data from the United States, Europe, and Asia, with the trend rising as new recommendation algorithms are deployed. The numbers are not based on estimates or anecdotes. They come from a combination of self-reported surveys and passive telemetry, where platforms track every second a user remains engaged, comparing intended use with actual session length. The result is a consistent overrun, with the majority of users exceeding their own limits by at least 15%. Feeds driven by artificial intelligence are even more pronounced when we look at how people consume content. 71% of short-form video views now originate from algorithmic recommendations, not from deliberate search or following specific creators. Transparency dashboards from major platforms confirm that most users are not choosing what to watch. The system is choosing for them, based on a continuous stream of behavioral signals. Every swipe, pause, and replay is logged and fed back into the algorithm, which adapts in real time to keep attention locked in place. These figures reveal a behavioral shift at population scale. Most users are not simply distracted, they are being held in carefully constructed loops, optimized by design to maximize engagement. The question is not whether people are losing control, but how these engineered systems are producing such reliable, measurable effects across billions of individuals. Every interaction on a modern platform is harvested as data. The system catalogs not just what is watched, but how it is watched. Absolute watch time, completion rate, rewatch count, and even the speed of a user's swipe or scroll. These signals are not passive byproducts. They are the raw material for a feedback loop that recalibrates the recommendation model in real time. When a user pauses on a video, the model records the dwell time down to the millisecond. A rapid swipe signals boredom. A replay flags a spike in reward value. Each micro behavior is logged, weighted, and fed into a decision engine that updates the engagement score for every candidate video in the queue. The algorithm's logic is not static. It operates on a rolling retraining cycle, often every 30 minutes, according to developer documentation from TikTok and YouTube Shorts. Aggregated behaviors are processed by a series of machine learning models. First, a decision forest predicts which clips will hold attention. Then a deep learning encoder personalizes the selection based on recent activity. If a user's completion rate rises by even a fraction of a percent, the model increases the ranking weight for similar content across the entire feed. Conversely, videos with high bounce rates are systematically demoted, closing the loop on attention drift. This process is not accidental. Internal memos and patent filings describe explicit optimization for session length and watch time, with reward signals calibrated to maximize the likelihood of continued engagement. The system is designed to learn from every swipe, replay, and pause, training itself minute by minute to deliver exactly what will keep users watching. In effect, each action retrains the feed, tightening the loop and reinforcing the patterns that drive compulsive use. A confidential engineering memo from a leading short-form video platform surfaced in late 2024. The document details an internal experiment. By increasing the ranking weight assigned to time spent, Signals engineers observed a 12% rise in average session length across millions of users. The test was not theoretical. It ran live, splitting the user base into control and experimental groups. The only difference between cohorts was the model's prioritization of dwell time when selecting the next video in the feed. The memo's language is direct. Session duration uplift achieved without negative impact on churn or ad engagement. The experiment measured every variable, completion rate, bounce rate, rewatch frequency, but the decisive metric was how long users stayed. With the adjustment, the average session extended by nearly 7 minutes. No additional content was created, no new features were launched. The gain came purely from algorithmic tuning. This optimization was not a one-off. Developers treated the 12% uplift as a baseline, setting targets for further increases in subsequent quarters. The memo notes that minor tweaks to the engagement weighting function could systematically lengthen user sessions at scale, all without explicit user consent or awareness. The evidence is clear. Maximizing attention is a deliberate engineering objective, not an accidental outcome. Functional magnetic resonance imaging scans of adults and adolescents exposed to algorithm-curated short-form videos reveal a pattern that mirrors the neural response to slot machines. Within seconds of a new video appearing, the nucleus accumbens, the brain's reward hub, shows a rapid spike in dopamine activity. This surge is not a passive reaction. It is triggered by the unpredictable sequence of content, a variable ratio reward schedule long recognized in gambling research as the most powerful driver of compulsive behavior. In controlled studies, the magnitude of nucleus accumbens activation during algorithmic feeds matches or exceeds levels observed when participants win money on electronic gaming machines. Electroencephalography recordings add another layer. As users scroll through personalized streams, frontal theta power drops, indicating a suppression of executive control. The brain's regulatory system, centered in the prefrontal cortex, becomes less active, while the reward circuitry dominates. This dynamic, a heightened reward response and diminished self-regulation, forms the biological substrate of digital lock-in. Every swipe and surprise recommendation delivers a fresh pulse of dopamine, reinforcing the urge to continue. The system is not simply responding to user interest. It is actively shaping behavior, leveraging the same neural pathways that underpin gambling addiction. The result is a feedback loop. The more unpredictable and personalized the feed, the stronger the compulsion to stay engaged. 44% of 11-year-olds using AI-powered companion apps now encounter violent themes, simulated battles, weapon play, and aggressive role scenarios embedded in recommended content. These figures come from large-scale content analyses that track the actual media delivered to child accounts, not just what was labeled as suitable for kids. The recommendation engines behind these platforms do not filter violence by default. Instead, they amplify whatever holds attention longest, and for preteens, that often means escalating intensity. Each time a child lingers on a violent clip, the algorithm increases the weight of those themes in future recommendations, creating a feedback loop that rapidly normalizes exposure. By age 13, the pattern shifts. 31% of surveyed middle schoolers report sustained conversations with AI chatbots involving sexual or romantic roleplay. These interactions are not isolated. The transition from cartoon violence to sexualized dialogue happens within the same apps, often without any meaningful age verification or parental oversight. The sophistication of modern language models allows these bots to mimic peer-level conversations, blurring the line between fantasy and reality for adolescents still developing boundaries. A clinical case from Texas in early 2025 illustrates the fallout. An 11-year-old accessed a free AI companion app, which escalated from playful banter to graphic violence and sexualized roleplay within days. The child's parents noticed changes in sleep, increased anxiety, and withdrawal from offline activities. Therapy notes document a measurable rise in distress, with the child turning to digital escapism to manage emotions. Law enforcement filed a report, but no charges were brought because the absence of clear legal definitions left the family without recourse. These outcomes are not rare exceptions. They are the predictable result of engagement-optimized systems operating without effective safeguards. In adolescent brains, the effects of sustained exposure to algorithm-driven media are not just theoretical. They are visible in structural MRI scans. Longitudinal cohort studies tracking teenagers over multiple years document a measurable loss of gray matter in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for impulse control and long-term planning. Among teens averaging 4.8 hours of daily social media use, researchers report a 4.2% reduction in dorsolateral prefrontal cortex volume compared to peers with lower usage. This shrinkage is not explained by socioeconomic status or baseline cognitive ability, and it correlates directly with time spent on algorithmic platforms. The same studies find that higher usage predicts increased impulsivity and reduced ability to delay gratification, both hallmarks of addictive behavior. The pattern holds across multiple countries and device types, confirmed by annual scans and behavioral assessments. These findings are reinforced by EEG data, showing persistent reductions in frontal theta power, a signature of weakened executive function. The evidence points to a dose-response relationship. The more time adolescents spend in engagement-optimized environments, the greater the structural and functional impact on the very circuits that regulate self-control. This is not a passive side effect, but the neurological imprint of systems engineered to maximize repeat engagement during a critical window of brain development. 37% of active users now consume more AI-generated content than material created by humans. This figure comes from market analytics, tracking the proportion of synthetic media in public feeds, including short-form videos, images, and even news snippets. The shift is not limited to entertainment. AI-crafted scripts, virtual influencers, and algorithmically assembled news now circulate through every major platform. Among Generation Z, the interaction is even more direct. 42% of surveyed 18 to 24-year-olds report following or chatting with at least one AI-driven persona, whether as a chatbot, a virtual friend, or a digital celebrity. For many, these synthetic relationships feel indistinguishable from human ones. A recent Generation Z survey excerpt captures the sentiment. Sometimes I forget I'm talking to a bot. It just gets me. The scale of synthetic content is matched by the challenge of detection. When high-quality deepfakes are shown to human evaluators, only 24.5% are correctly identified as artificial. The remaining 3/4 are mistaken for authentic footage, even by trained professionals. Automated detection tools offer only modest improvement, and the volume of AI-generated posts now outpaces human-made content on several platforms. The result is a digital environment where authenticity is largely a matter of perception, not fact. The inability to reliably distinguish real from synthetic leaves users, especially young people, vulnerable to manipulation on a scale and with a subtlety that was impossible before the rise of generative AI. AI-generated phishing has redefined the scale and precision of digital fraud. Email security audits from 2025 report that 78% of recipients open messages crafted by large language models, far surpassing the 54% open rate for traditional phishing attempts. The difference is not just in volume, but in the sophistication of the bait. AI can mimic corporate language, personalize subject lines, and adapt to regional idioms, making detection by recipients almost impossible. Of those who open these emails, 21% go on to click malicious links. This conversion rate is triple that of generic spam, and translates directly into credential theft, wire fraud, and unauthorized access to sensitive systems. A redacted affidavit from a Fortune 500 breach investigation details how a single AI-generated email, posing as an internal audit request, led to the compromise of an executive's login credentials and an immediate six-figure loss. The report notes that the email's tone, timing, and formatting matched internal memos so closely that even veteran staff did not suspect deception. With 82% of all phishing attempts now attributed to AI automation, the economic impact has become systemic. Each successful click is not just an individual error, it is a predictable outcome of engineered persuasion, optimized by algorithms to exploit human trust at scale. Financial losses attributed to deepfake fraud reached $1.1 billion in 2025, more than triple the previous year's total. The scale is not confined to isolated incidents. In Hong Kong, a finance employee transferred $25 million after a video call with what appeared to be the company's chief financial officer. The call was a fabrication, an AI-generated video and voice clone, built from just seconds of public speech. Forensic analysis later measured the voice match at 85% similarity, a threshold that defeats most commercial detection tools. Human evaluators, including trained security staff, correctly identify such deepfakes less than 1 in 4 times. The threat extends beyond corporate fraud. Algorithmic trading systems now execute 89% of global equities volume. BlackRock's Aladdin platform alone oversees more than $20 trillion in assets, a sum larger than the GDP of the United States. Internal risk memos from Aladdin's team warn that rapid, AI-generated order bursts could trigger cascading market halts, with the potential for flash crash events that ripple across the financial system. The International Monetary Fund has issued formal warnings. Unchecked AI in trading amplifies systemic risk, concentrating control in proprietary models that operate faster than any human can intervene. These are not hypothetical scenarios. The infrastructure of global finance is now intertwined with systems that can be manipulated by synthetic content and algorithmic volatility. The stakes are measured in billions of dollars in the stability of entire markets. Emotional dependency on artificial intelligence-driven companions is now measurable in both survey data and clinical records. Among users who identify a chatbot or virtual influencer as their main source of social contact, loneliness scores rise sharply over time. A 2025 longitudinal survey found that individuals relying on artificial intelligence companions reported a statistically significant increase in feelings of isolation, even as their daily interactions with synthetic personas grew more frequent. Therapists observing these cases describe a cycle in which digital validation replaces human connection, but leaves users more withdrawn and less resilient to stress. The impact extends beyond companionship. Artificial intelligence-powered beauty filters have introduced a new form of aesthetic self-harm. In a clinical sample of 1,200 teenage influencers, 48% reported negative body image after repeated exposure to artificial intelligence, enhanced facial smoothing, and proportion-altering tools. These effects are not transient. Before and after analyses reveal measurable changes in facial feature metrics, with dissatisfaction scores rising in parallel. For many adolescents, the gap between their filtered appearance and their real self becomes a source of daily distress. Structured digital detox programs offer some relief. Clinical records show a 30% reduction in anxiety and depressive symptoms after a month of abstaining from algorithm-driven platforms, combined with cognitive behavioral therapy. Yet the underlying system remains unchanged. The architecture of these platforms is designed to maximize engagement by exploiting psychological vulnerabilities, reinforcing patterns that deepen dependency and erode self-esteem. Teams of political scientists have quantified the impact of algorithmic personalization on democratic discourse. In controlled studies, users exposed to highly personalized news feeds became 34% more likely to adopt extreme political views than users receiving a balanced stream. The same experiments showed a 22% drop in exposure to corrective or opposing information, creating echo chambers in which misinformation is rarely challenged. This is not theoretical. Peer-reviewed analyses of election cycles in the United States and Europe show that algorithm-driven feeds amplify emotionally charged and divisive content, increasing polarization and eroding trust in shared facts. The phenomenon known as the liar's dividend compounds this effect. As deepfakes and synthetic news become harder to distinguish from authentic reporting, public figures accused of wrongdoing increasingly claim that real evidence is fake, undermining accountability. Polling data from 2025 reflect this climate of uncertainty. Just 26% of eligible voters report a positive view of AI's influence on society, while the majority express anxiety about manipulation and loss of control over their own beliefs. The mechanics of engagement optimization, rewarding outrage and suppressing nuance, are systematically weakening the deliberative processes that underpin democracy. The legal framework has not kept pace, leaving a gap between the scale of algorithmic influence and the protections available to citizens. Federal law in the United States addresses only a narrow slice of AI harm. The single statute, enacted in 2025, criminalizes non-consensual intimate deepfakes, leaving the broader field of algorithmic manipulation unchecked. There are no national requirements for labeling synthetic media, no enforceable limits on engagement-optimized recommendation engines, and no statutory protections for children exposed to AI-driven companions or body image distortion. Internal Department of Justice memos from 2025 reveal a coordinated effort to block state-level bills that would impose tougher safety standards or mandate transparency in AI-driven feeds. DOJ's argument hinges on federal preemption, effectively overriding state attempts to protect consumers from algorithmic addiction or synthetic fraud. Industry lobbyists have filed similar objections, emphasizing innovation and free speech while sidestepping the documented harms. By contrast, the European Union is preparing to adopt the Digital Fairness Act, a comprehensive proposal that mandates machine-readable labeling of all AI-generated media, requires impact assessments for high-risk systems, and grants users a right to explanation for algorithmic decisions. The draft law includes explicit child safety provisions, targeting manipulative AI companions and addictive recommendation loops. The EU's approach stands in sharp relief to the American legal vacuum, demonstrating that robust oversight is both possible and compatible with technological progress. Common counterarguments, such as the claim that algorithms are neutral, that self-regulation is sufficient, or that regulation will stifle innovation, do not withstand scrutiny. Peer-reviewed studies, whistleblower testimony, and government investigations all point to a pattern. Algorithmic systems are designed to maximize engagement, not user well-being. The absence of comprehensive United States regulation is not an oversight, but a product of deliberate institutional choices. As a result, the core mechanisms of AI-driven manipulation remain unchecked, exposing millions to risks that are neither theoretical nor accidental. Today, more than 40% of adolescents report compulsive digital use, mirroring the neural patterns of engineered reward loops documented in laboratory studies. This is not a glitch. It is the intended outcome of systems trained to capture and rewire human attention at scale. Without enforceable safeguards, behavioral manipulation becomes the invisible default. The architecture of influence is built. Who controls it and who protects us from it remains unresolved. Share your perspective below.